Hello, and welcome to our webinar, Immutability, the Key to Ransomware Protection, brought to you by Arcserve. I'm your host, Katie Bavoso from the Channel Company. Research shows 32% of organizations hit with a ransomware attack this year paid to get their data back, but only 8% of them saw all of their data restored. Defending critical data is just as important as recovering that data. Are you providing your clients with a true backup solution or only a partial one? That's exactly what we'll be discussing today. I'm joined now by Director of Sales Engineering for North America at Arcserve, Sean Massey. Welcome, Sean. Good to see you.
Thank you very much, Katie. It's great to be here.
Oh, it's great to have you. I'm excited for our discussion today. So let's jump right into segment one. Is your data really backed up? The ultimate question in itself, right, Sean? So we'll continue on to question one. Let's start by getting a feel for the threat landscape. What kind of impact has the growing threat of ransomware had on your customer base? And what are the greatest concerns right now?
Ransomware is really just a horrible threat amongst really all businesses around the world. And we cannot go a day without seeing a headline of a particular company or organization or IT provider that has been impacted by ransomware. And it's gotten very sophisticated over the last several years, and to a point where it is an ongoing threat that I would say, if I'm writing a disaster plan, this is something that is likely to happen to all organizations.
And that's a very scary and chilling reality there. So where do conventional data backup solutions fall short? And what circumstances or events do organizations not always consider when they're choosing that backup solution? It's so easy to think that you're on the right track, but there's always the unknowable that could happen.
Absolutely. And when we think about the backup solutions, if the backups gets compromised, the likelihood of the ransom being paid goes up dramatically higher. So as we look at historically with the backup, especially the way that IT organizations have really constructed it, they've done like what we call a 3-2-1 approach, where we have basically you want 3 copies of the data. Basically, one would be the production, and then we'd have copies on 2 different places, and then we'd have 2 different mediums, and then an offsite. Right now, that is kind of antiquated because of the sophistication that ransomware ends up utilizing.
So you started to mention it right there about the 3-2-1, but there's a strategy of 3-2-1-1 backup. What is that strategy and why is it important?
That's also an outstanding question, Katie, because the 3-2-1 has its limitations, because what would happen, like let's say, we'll just start with that for a second, is that if the servers themselves get compromised, the ransomware infection can start encrypting files before anybody knows it. And so those files then get backed up by whatever backup product that you have, and then get taken to the local storage. And then it can actually be then replicated off to their offsite. And without really knowing, the potential is that you don't know that ransomware is, active in your environment, but your data has already been compromised all the way through. And so, Arcserve, we do subscribe to the 3-2-1-1 theory, and there's a couple ways that folks are trying to get around it. Now, before I go to our preferred method for 3-2-1-1, I'll talk to a different method. What some folks have implemented, and it's been around for a little while, but they'll do what they call an air gap scenario. And air gapping, basically, it's a manual process where you're taking the backup and you're placing it on media, and you remove it from network access, and you remove it from any access that anybody would have from the internet. The problem with air gapping is that the data becomes stale. And the other problem with air gapping is that when you bring everything back, it's all a manual process. So there's a lot of heavy lifting that's involved with it. So with the Arcserve, we have a 3-2-1-1 scenario where the extra one is immutability. And with immutability, it allows us to have something that is live and active, storage that's live and active on the network itself, but it's immutable. so that if ransomware were to infect the entire organization, because it's immutable, we would be able to go back to any of the snapshot point in time and be able to restore the data prior to the infection.
And that's a perfect segue into our second segment, Sean, the power of immutability. So, for those who may be hearing this term for the first time or not totally familiar with it, what does it mean to be immutable in relation to storage? And how does Arcserve apply this approach to one safe immutable?
Immutability, think of it as worm, right? And it's not the worm dance. It's not the worm that you put on the fishing hook when we go fishing, right? Worm stands for write once, read many, right? And worm is nothing new. Worm has been around. There are tape drives, for instance, that are worm drives. So you can only use them once. But with our product, and it's called OneSafe. OneSafe is our immutable appliance. The way that we construct it is that the file system is presented as a service, and the objects that are the data is below the file system. So no one can actually penetrate to where the data actually is. So with our OneSafe, when we implement these snapshots, we are implementing the worm protection. And by that protection allows us to be able to very quickly roll back to the way it was, because we're only writing that data once. We're not going to overwrite it at all.
So, Sean, how does OneSafe Immutable help protect data against ransomware? Obviously, from everything you just said, we're able to kind of get an idea of it, but can you walk us through that exact process?
Yeah, so we're not necessarily preventing ransomware. However, if ransomware were to occur, then we're able to quickly recover from it. And so let's walk through that scenario. If you are using our OneSafe appliance, and let me just real quick, there's more than two, but the two primary use cases that people use our OneSafe appliance for is for secondary storage, like your backup data. And the second piece is sometimes they'll use our OneSafe as a file server replacement. So it's actually serving up the file shares. And in either case, when we implement our snapshots, we're taking snapshots every 90 seconds, right? So if ransomware were to be pervasive inside the network and find where the data is located on the OneSafe cluster, and encrypts it, and we realize that, we can actually go in within about a minute. I can do a command line, command, and be able to present another share as it was from any snapshot that I would end up choosing. And that snapshot, you have flexibilities. You can keep snapshots forever if you want to. It doesn't matter what the size of the share is. We're able to represent that, completely and quickly. And what I would also say is that in the data protection business, and I've been at Arcserve and StorageCraft for the last 11 years, we always talk about testing. With our OneSafe appliance, it gives the ability to test without having any type of ramification. So you can actually go through and you can have a test scenario to say, all right, we've just been hit by ransomware. We need to go back to X amount, and then they can run through the drill and be able to have a proven process of recovery.
Thank you, Sean. So with this particular tool, how scalable is the OneSafe immutable solution? I'm guessing it's not a one size fits all kind of situation.
Typically speaking, unless the driver is just immutable storage, the storage that folks would require, we say roughly around 10 terabytes, you might be a candidate for our OneSafe. But we can scale, it is object-based storage and allows us the scalability, so we can have certainly up to 7 nodes in a cluster that are working under the same namespace. So you could start with 1 node, and when that starts to fill up and you need more storage, you basically just purchase another one, you drop it in, you configure it, within 15 minutes, it adds all of that storage back to that whole cluster, and you're able to do it. So very easily, there's no forklift upgrades, there's no copying or robocopying going back and forth. We're able just to add nodes to the cluster and then increase the storage size significantly.
Sean, what else sets OneSafe apart from competing backup solutions?
Really, it's the design. So we have our design of immutability is actually phenomenal. And right now, right, folks are scrambling everywhere in order to do some type of immutability. And there is immutability in cloud storage, with AWS or Wasabi, and as a couple examples. But the problem with that is that you don't have that local storage. It's always quicker to restore locally. But our ability to be scalable, our ability to have that protection, that immutable protection, really, and at a price point that is not the price point for like what you would commonly think of with your enterprise storage. Those three things really make it very appealing to an organization.
Sean, last question in this segment before we move on to segment 3. Can you give me a use case in which OneSafe Immutable proved to be a successful investment for a client?
Absolutely, and it actually kind of goes with some of the description of what I've been talking about for the last couple of minutes. But certainly I'm aware of one of our customers using the OneSafe. They were using the OneSafe for actually their backup target, which, by the way, was not even an Arcserve product. So they were using our OneSafe appliance as a backup target for a different backup vendor. But then having a ransomware infection, and then certainly found the share where the backup target was at, but very easily and very quickly that customer was able to represent that share within minutes. So they were able to start the recovery quicker of their machines and be able to really ultimately not pay the ransom. And that is the goal. We don't want to pay the ransom.
Very much so. Thank you so much, Sean. Let's go into our final segment now, the partner benefit. Where is the opportunity here for reseller partners of Arcserve who sell OneSafe Immutable?
Well, the opportunity is really increasing because what's happening is that there are some organizations that have been compromised by ransomware where they may have paid the ransom. And when they pay the ransom, often it's not them, it's insurance companies, right? So then, of course, the insurance company comes back and says, okay, in order to keep your cyber insurance, here is what you need to do. The issue really comes about how quickly can you restore and whether you can restore, right? So that those two pieces are really, really compelling. So our partners, as they are going out, can address those needs that are happening to those businesses, right, that they serve, and be able to say, yes, we do have a solution, and it's an on-prem solution, and it gives you the ability to quickly recover, but also really kind of locking down or keeping the data safe and secure from it being changed. So in that sense, it allows them to be more of that trusted advisor. And I know that that's a term that we used 10, 15 years ago, right? But really, it's these type of solutions that allow that trust to be built upon, as well as demonstrated when something hits the fan and we do need to recover.
And in this day and age, it's very likely that something will hit the fan sooner or later.
No doubt.
Thanks, Sean. So, what support does Arcserve offer reseller partners in relation to OneSafe?
Well, certainly, we have all of the sales support in the pre-sales engineering, so we can assist from the get-go of getting trained and the implementation and the recovery system of that. And then we have a world-class technical support that we do offer, as well as vendor support for the hardware that we choose. So you can choose to even have a 4-hour response time, like if you had a power supply failure or whatever the case may be, we can have that next business day or 4-hour, depending on the package that you end up choosing. So what we'd like to do is have just encompass and circle around and give our partners what they need, whether it be training, whether it be education and training, obviously go together, and as well as technical support or even hardware support.
Last question in this interview today, Sean. How does Arcserve differentiate its solutions to make them easier to sell for your reseller partners?
Well, with the merger with Arcserve and StorageCraft earlier this year, we have become just a very versatile company with data protection. So we can protect data all the way from the smallest of small customers all the way to the enterprise and everything in between. And so what that allows for our partners to do is that they don't have to worry about having a vendor for this type of customer and a vendor for this type of customer. They can have a vendor that will have a solution set that will be able to fit any need.
A lot of surface to cover there, an exciting opportunity for partners. Sean, thank you so much for your time today. That brings us to the end of the webinar, and I very much appreciate getting to talk to you. And of course, thank you at home for watching. Once again, I'm Katie Bavoso. Take care.